It was the kind of night when every sound feels louder than it should. Rain tapped against the windows like impatient fingers. The house, small and tired, seemed to breathe in the dark. Emily sat on the couch, half dozing, the glow of the lamp throwing a soft circle of light around her. Bills lay scattered across the coffee table. She tried not to look at them. Tried not to think about how thin the pantry shelves had become. Then, a knock. Just a quick note: if you're new here and haven't subscribed, please take a moment to do so. Your support means the world and helps us share more heartfelt stories. A knock. Sharp. Unexpected. At midnight. Her breath caught. The house had always felt safe, tucked at the end of a quiet street. No one came here uninvited, not this late. She froze, listening, every nerve on edge. Another knock. This one slower, deliberate. Her heart hammered. She whispered to herself, "Don't move. Just, don't move." But then, faintly, she heard it, a voice. A man's voice, muffled by the door, low and strained. "Please." A pause. "I just need somewhere to stay. Just for tonight." Emily stood. Every instinct screamed at her to stay put, but curiosity dragged her forward. She inched toward the door, bare feet silent on the worn wooden floor. Through the peephole, she saw him. A man in his 30s, drenched from the storm. Dark hair plastered to his forehead, shadows under his eyes. He didn't look drunk. He didn't look dangerous. But there was something about the way he stood, shoulders tense, fists clenched, that made her stomach tighten. She spoke through the door, voice steady though her hands trembled. "Who are you?" The man looked up, startled by her voice. "My name's Daniel," he said. His voice cracked. I don't have anywhere else to go." Emily hesitated. She thought of her 8-year-old daughter, Lily, asleep upstairs. Her first instinct was to tell him to leave. But then she noticed something, a small backpack slung over his shoulder, soaked through. He looked less like a threat and more like a man who'd been running. Still, she kept her hand on the lock. "Why here? Why my house?" He swallowed, his jaw tightening. I was told you sometimes take in boarders. For extra cash." Her chest tightened. That was true. She'd let out the spare room before, just to make ends meet. But never like this. Never at midnight, with rain hammering the roof and a stranger dripping water onto her porch. Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I'll pay. Tomorrow. Just, please." The storm roared outside, wind rattling the old windows. Emily's mind raced. She couldn't risk letting in danger, but she couldn't ignore the desperation in his eyes either. She thought of Lily upstairs, tucked safe beneath her blanket. Finally, Emily cracked the door open, just an inch. Daniel's face appeared in the gap, pale, gaunt, eyes too sharp for comfort. He looked like a man carved from tension. "One night," Emily said softly, her voice edged with warning. "Just one." Daniel exhaled, shoulders sagging with relief. "Thank you." But as she unlatched the chain and let him step inside, a strange chill followed him. Something unspoken, something heavy. Emily couldn't name it yet. But she felt it. A shadow had entered her home. And with it, a past she would soon regret inviting in. The storm hadn't let up. Rain slapped against the siding while thunder rolled far off, low and restless, like the earth groaning in its sleep. Emily showed Daniel the spare room at the end of the hall. The door creaked when she pushed it open. She always meant to fix that, but there was never time, never enough money. The room was plain. A narrow bed, a dresser with one handle missing, a lamp that flickered when it wanted to. Still, Daniel's eyes scanned it with something that looked like gratitude, though his jaw stayed tight. "You can leave your bag there," Emily said. She hovered near the doorway, arms crossed. Bathrooms across the hall. Towels in the cabinet. Daniel nodded once. He didn't step inside right away. Instead, he lingered in the hallway, dripping water onto the floorboards, his fingers clenched around the strap of his backpack. "Thank you," he murmured. His voice was low, uneven. Emily shifted, uneasy. She wasn't used to a man's presence in the house. Not since Lily's father had left years ago. The silence between them stretched, broken only by the hiss of the storm outside. Finally, Daniel stepped into the room and set his bag down. She noticed how carefully he placed it, like it held something fragile. Or dangerous. Emily's voice came out sharper than she intended. "You'll get paid work tomorrow if you need it. There's a diner down the road that always needs hands." Daniel looked at her then. Really looked. His eyes were dark, searching, almost too intense. She felt pinned under his gaze. "I'll find something," he said quietly. Then, softer, "I'm not planning to stay long." She gave a stiff nod and backed out of the room, pulling the door nearly shut. Nearly. She couldn't quite bring herself to close it completely. Upstairs, Emily peeked into Lily's room. Her daughter was curled beneath her blanket, stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin. The storm hadn't woken her. Emily exhaled, easing some of the tightness in her chest. But downstairs, the weight of Daniel's presence pressed against the walls. She could feel it, even with the door closed. She returned to the living room, gathered the bills off the coffee table, and stacked them into a neat pile. She told herself this was why she had said yes. Because every dollar mattered. Because the mortgage was due. Because Lily deserved more than constant worry. Still, unease clung to her. At some point, exhaustion pulled her under. She woke hours later to silence. The storm had passed, leaving the night thick and still. And then she heard it. A floorboard creak. Not overhead, not in Lily's room, but downstairs. Emily froze, breath sharp in her chest. Slowly, she pushed herself up and listened. Another creak, closer this time, followed by the faint scrape of wood against wood. Her pulse raced. She slipped off the couch and padded toward the kitchen, her step silent. The light over the sink was on. The glow spilled into the hallway, faint but enough to catch the shadow of a man moving inside. Daniel. His back was turned, his posture hunched as he rifled through a drawer. His backpack sat open on the table, half unzipped. Emily's voice came out before she could stop it. "What are you doing?" Daniel stiffened, shoulders rigid. Slowly, he turned his head, eyes catching hers across the dim room. And in that single look, sharp, guarded, almost feral, Emily realized something unsettling. This man wasn't just passing through. He was hiding. The silence between them stretched, taut as wire. Daniel's hand hovered over the open drawer. The faint glint of metal caught Emily's eye. Her stomach knotted. A knife. For a heartbeat, the only sound was the clock ticking from the living room, each second hammering louder than the last. Daniel finally spoke, his voice rough. I wasn't going to use it." Emily's throat tightened. "Then why were you holding it?" He set the knife down carefully, the blade clinking against the wood. His hand lingered there, tense, before pulling back. He turned to face her fully, jaw set hard. "I couldn't sleep," he said. "I needed something to feel safe. Just for tonight." Her skin prickled. That explanation should have soothed her, but it didn't. His words were too flat, too practiced, like he'd said them before. "You're under my roof," she whispered, voice sharp though her knees felt weak. "And my daughter's upstairs. You understand what that means?" Daniel's gaze flickered. At the mention of Lily, his expression shifted. For just a second, there was something raw in his eyes. Guilt. Pain. Something human. "I know," he said quietly. "I wouldn't hurt her. Or you." Emily didn't move closer. She stayed in the doorway, the kitchen table between them like a barrier. She studied him, the wet strands of hair still clinging to his forehead, the faint tremor in his hands. He looked worn down, but beneath the exhaustion, there was a constant readiness, as if he expected someone to burst through the door at any moment. Her voice softened, though suspicion never left her. "What are you running from, Daniel?" He didn't answer. He just closed the drawer and zipped his backpack with a sharp tug. The sound cut through the stillness like a blade. "Go back to bed," he muttered. "Please." It wasn't a command. It was closer to a plea. Emily hesitated. She should have thrown him out right then, should have slammed the door behind him and bolted it. But the storm had left the night heavy and wet, and the thought of sending him back into the dark felt impossible. So she turned, slowly, and walked back to the living room. She lowered herself onto the couch again, heart still hammering, eyes fixed on the ceiling as though she could see through to Lily's room above. Sleep never came. The morning light crept in pale and thin. Emily must have drifted off because she woke to the sound of dishes clinking. For a panicked second, she sat up, ready to run, but it wasn't chaos waiting in the kitchen. It was Daniel. He stood at the stove, sleeves rolled up, frying eggs in the old pan that always tilted to one side. The smell of butter filled the room, warm and startlingly normal. "Morning," he said without turning. His voice was calm, almost gentle. Emily stayed in the doorway, arms folded. "You think cooking breakfast makes last night disappear?" Daniel set a plate on the table. Eggs, toast, carefully made. He looked at her then, his eyes tired but steady. "No. But it's the least I can do." Before Emily could answer, small footsteps padded down the stairs. Lily appeared, rubbing her eyes, hair tangled from sleep. She froze when she saw Daniel at the table. Her voice was small. "Mom, who's that?" Emily's heart skipped. She opened her mouth, but no words came. And Daniel, he gave Lily a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'm a friend," he said softly. "Just staying for a little while." The way he said it made Emily's stomach twist. Because it sounded less like a promise, and more like a warning. Lily slid into her usual chair, the one by the window where the light always fell soft in the mornings. She clutched her stuffed rabbit to her chest, watching Daniel with wary curiosity. Emily moved quickly, pulling a chair between them as if her body alone could act as a wall. She poured Lily a glass of juice, keeping her voice light though her nerves buzzed. "This is Daniel," she said carefully. "He's just renting the spare room for a little while." Lily blinked at him. "Like Mr. Howard used to?" Emily forced a smile. "Something like that." Daniel set down his fork. "Nice to meet you, Lily." His tone was soft, too soft, as though he'd been around children before and knew the rhythm of speaking to them. Emily caught that detail. It unsettled her more than if he'd been cold or dismissive. Lily tilted her head. "Why are your hands shaking?" Daniel's eyes flickered. He pulled them back into his lap, curling his fingers. "Because I didn't sleep much," he said. Emily stepped in quickly, changing the subject. "Eat your breakfast, honey." But Lily wasn't done. Kids had a way of cutting through silence with questions no one wanted asked. "Do you have a little girl too?" Daniel's face stilled. He stared at his plate, shoulders tense. The air seemed to shift. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. "No. Not anymore." Emily felt the words like ice. "Not anymore." She opened her mouth to redirect, but Lily had already gone quiet, sensing the heaviness she couldn't name. The kitchen filled with small sounds, the scrape of forks, the hum of the old fridge. Daniel ate quickly, methodically, as if the act of eating was work. When he finished, he rinsed his plate in the sink and dried it with a towel like it was second nature. Emily watched every move, cataloging the details, the way he checked the back door lock before leaving the kitchen, how he glanced toward the window as though expecting eyes to be on him. When Lily skipped off to get dressed for school, Emily cornered him. "You don't just say something like that in front of a child," she hissed. Daniel's expression hardened. It slipped. "Not anymore," she pressed, lowering her voice. "What happened to your child, Daniel?" For a moment, something flickered in his eyes, a storm of grief, anger, and something else she couldn't name. Then, just as quickly, he shut it down. That's not a story I can tell you. Her jaw tightened. Then don't expect me to trust you. He gave a small, bitter smile. I don't expect anyone to trust me. Emily studied him, searching for cracks in his armor. Every instinct told her there was truth buried under layers of silence, but pushing him felt dangerous. She stepped back, heart thudding. Just remember, she said, voice sharp, my daughter is everything to me. If you give me a single reason to think she isn't safe, you'll be out that door before you can blink. Daniel met her gaze. His voice dropped to a whisper, almost a warning. Then you'd better hope the people I'm running from don't find me here. The words lodged in her chest like a stone. He wasn't just a drifter. He was hiding from someone who might already be looking. And now, by letting him in, she and Lily were part of it. By afternoon, the storm had drained away, leaving the air damp and restless. Emily walked Lily to the bus stop, her coat pulled tight, her thoughts spinning. Daniel had stayed behind at the house, claiming he would help around while they were gone. She didn't like leaving him there alone. Not with his backpack that never left his sight. Not with words that still echoed, you'd better hope the people I'm running from don't find me here. At the corner, Mrs. Kravitz waved from her porch. She was the kind of neighbor who never missed a detail, always watching with her sharp little eyes. New face at your place, she called, voice sweet but probing. Another boarder? Emily forced a casual smile. Just temporary. Mrs. Kravitz tilted her head, squinting. Well, he doesn't look like the others. Men like that, she lowered her voice. They bring trouble. Emily's stomach twisted. She hated how the woman could sense things, hated how quickly she'd noticed. It's fine, Emily replied. Really? But even as she said it, she didn't believe it. When Emily returned home, the smell of cut grass drifted from the backyard. She rounded the corner and froze. Daniel was out there, mowing the overgrown patch of lawn with her old push mower. Sweat streaked his forehead, his sleeves rolled, muscles taut with effort. For a moment, he looked like any ordinary man trying to repay kindness with work. But then she saw it again, that constant scanning of the tree line, the twitch in his shoulders when a car door slammed down the street. Always watching. Always expecting. You didn't have to do that, she said, stepping onto the porch. Daniel wiped his brow with the back of his hand. I told you I'd pull my weight. She crossed her arms. Pulling your weight doesn't mean pulling knives out of drawers at 2 a.m. He froze, mower still humming. His jaw tightened. Then, without a word, he shut it off and wheeled it back to the shed. Inside, while he showered, Emily wandered toward the spare room. The door was ajar, the smell of damp clothes drifting out. Her eyes landed on the backpack sitting neatly by the bed. Her pulse quickened. She knew better. But her hand moved anyway. She knelt, unzipped it slowly, careful not to make a sound. Inside, clothes, worn and patched. A toothbrush. A faded photograph, edges frayed. She pulled it out. The picture showed Daniel with a young woman and a little girl, maybe 6 years old. The woman's smile was radiant, the child's grin wide and unguarded. Daniel stood between them, his hand resting on the girl's shoulder. Emily's throat tightened. But tucked behind the photo was something else, an envelope. Thick. Stamped, but no address. She slid it halfway out, and her heart stopped. Inside were dozens of bills. 20s. 50s. Hundreds. Stacked crisp, bound with a rubber band. Her hand shook. She shoved it back, zipped the bag, and stood just as the floor creaked behind her. Daniel stood in the doorway, damp hair clinging to his temples, a towel slung over his shoulder. His eyes dropped to the backpack, then to her hands. The air between them turned sharp. What are you doing? His voice was low, dangerous now, stripped of gentleness. Emily swallowed hard, her mouth dry. I could ask you the same thing. For a moment, neither moved. The storm outside was gone, but inside the house, another one had begun to rise. The towel slipped from Daniel's shoulder as he stepped fully into the room. His frame filled the doorway, water dripping from his hair onto the floorboards. Emily's chest rose and fell too quickly. She still clutched the photograph in her hand. The little girl's smile beamed up at her, innocent and bright, so achingly out of place against the tension choking the air. Daniel's voice cut through, steady but taut. "Put it back." Her fingers tightened around the photo. "Who is she?" He didn't move. He just stared, jaw clenched, eyes darker than before. Finally, he spoke. "My daughter." The words hung heavy, thicker than the humid air. Emily's throat caught. "You told Lily you didn't have one. You said, not anymore." His face shifted, like he'd been struck. Then he stepped closer, his voice raw. "She's gone. That's what I meant." Emily glanced at the backpack, then at him. "And the money? Is that what you're really running from?" His hand flexed at his side, as though fighting the urge to snatch the photograph away. "You don't understand." "Then help me understand," Emily pressed. Her voice trembled, but she didn't back down. "Because right now, you look like a man hiding stolen cash and carrying ghosts." The muscles in his jaw ticked. His eyes darted toward the hall, as if making sure Lily wasn't there. Then he lowered his voice, almost a whisper. "Do you think I'd be stupid enough to come here, to you, if I'd done something criminal?" Emily hesitated. His words landed with weight, but doubt still gnawed at her. Daniel stepped forward and plucked the photo gently from her hand. His thumb brushed the smiling girl's face. For the first time since he'd arrived, his posture cracked. Shoulders slumped, voice breaking. Her name was Anna. She was 6. Emily's breath caught. She didn't want to ask, but the question forced itself out. What happened to her? Daniel closed his eyes. A beat of silence. Then another. She died. Wrong place, wrong time. Because of me. The confession hit like a blow. Emily felt her chest tighten, her instincts warring, sympathy pulling one way, fear the other. He tucked the photo back into the backpack, zipped it with precision, and finally looked up at her. His eyes shone, not with tears, but with a raw edge that looked dangerously close to breaking. "I'm not running from the law," he said. "I'm running from people who don't forgive mistakes. People who think I owe them more than I could ever pay." Emily's hands shook at her sides. "And now you've brought them here. Into my home. Around my daughter." He didn't argue. He didn't try to deny it. He just nodded once, slow, like a man carrying a sentence he'd already accepted. "Yes." The word rang through her. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She backed toward the doorway, her voice tight. "You need to leave. Tonight." Daniel's eyes sharpened again, walls slamming back into place. "You think they won't find me if I walk out that door? You think they won't follow the trail right back here, to you, to her?" He jerked his chin toward the ceiling, where Lily's laughter faintly echoed from her room. Emily froze, the blood draining from her face. Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice to a grim whisper. "You don't get it. They already know where I am." The rest of the day passed in a haze. Emily moved through her house like a ghost, folding laundry, sweeping floors, anything to keep her hands busy. But her mind kept circling back to Daniel's words, "They already know where I am." By the time Lily's bus groaned to a stop at the corner, Emily's nerves were frayed raw. She met her daughter with a tight smile, gripping her small hand harder than usual as they walked back. Daniel was on the porch, sitting stiff in one of the old wicker chairs. His eyes weren't on them, though. They were fixed across the street. Emily followed his gaze. A dark sedan was parked at the curb, engine idling. The windows were tinted too black to see through. Her pulse quickened. "Is that them?" she whispered. Daniel didn't look at her. "Don't stare." She forced her steps steady, ushering Lily inside, but every nerve screamed at her back that someone was watching. Once the door shut, she pulled Lily toward the kitchen. Go wash up, sweetheart. I'll make you a snack. When Lily disappeared down the hall, Emily turned on Daniel. Tell me the truth. Right now. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. His jaw was taut, but his eyes never left the window. They're checking. Making sure I'm still here. Her stomach turned. Who are they? His voice dropped to a rasp. Men who don't forgive debts. Men who think blood is a fair price. Emily gripped the edge of the counter. And what happens when they decide to come in? Daniel finally looked at her, and for the first time, fear crept into his eyes. Not for himself, for them. Then you'll wish you'd never opened that door last night. Evening bled into night. The car stayed parked outside. Its headlights never turned on, its engine never revved. Just a shadow sitting in the street, heavy and constant. Emily tried to distract Lily with homework, cartoons, anything to keep her from noticing. But every time the girl passed the front window, Emily's stomach clenched. By 9, Lily was tucked into bed, clutching her rabbit, blissfully unaware. Emily lingered by her doorway until her breathing evened out. Then she padded back downstairs, where Daniel sat at the kitchen table, hunched over, the photograph of his daughter spread in front of him like a wound he couldn't stop staring at. You can't stay, Emily said quietly. Daniel didn't lift his head. And if I leave, they'll come inside looking for me. Do you want that with her in the house? Her throat tightened. She hated that his words made sense. Hated that he'd turned her home into a trap she couldn't step out of. She sat opposite him, folding her arms on the table. Then what? You wait them out? Hope they get bored and drive away? Daniel finally looked up, his expression grim. No. They don't get bored. They wait until you're desperate. Until you make a mistake. Then they take everything. Emily swallowed hard. Her chest ached with a mixture of anger and dread. You brought this here, she whispered. You dragged us into it. Daniel's hands curled into fists. I didn't ask for your help. You opened that door. The words stung because they were true. But before Emily could answer, headlights flared through the front curtains. A second car had pulled up. And this one killed the silence with the slam of doors. The slam of car doors cracked through the night like gunfire. Emily's breath caught. Her hands clenched the edge of the table until her knuckles whitened. Daniel rose slowly, the chair scraping against the floor. His eyes went to the window, then back to her. They're here. Emily's voice came out thin. What do they want from you? He didn't answer. Instead, he reached for his backpack and slung it over his shoulder. The movement was so calm it terrified her more than panic ever could. Outside, footsteps crunched over gravel. 2, maybe 3 men. A low murmur of voices. Then knock, knock, knock. Heavy, deliberate, rattling the front door. Lily stirred upstairs, her small voice drifting down. Mom? Emily rushed to the bottom of the stairs. Stay in your room, honey. Lock the door. The knocking came again, harder. This time followed by a man's voice, smooth and taunting. Daniel. We know you're in there. Come on out, let's talk. Emily's heart pounded. She looked at Daniel. His face was carved from stone, but sweat beaded at his temple. The voice called again, louder. Or do we have to come in? Daniel moved toward the door, but Emily grabbed his arm. You open that, they'll kill you. He looked down at her hand, then into her eyes. If I don't open it, they'll come through anyway. And they won't stop at me. The weight of his words settled like ice in her chest. Another knock, this one accompanied by a sharp kick against the bottom panel. The door shuddered. Emily flinched. Daniel pulled free of her grip and stepped closer. He raised his voice, steady, almost defiant. You're wasting your time. From the other side, laughter. Cold. One of the men replied, "Time's all we've got, Danny boy." Emily pressed a hand to her mouth. The sound of boots shifting on the porch boards made the walls feel smaller, thinner, like paper between them and violence. Daniel turned to her suddenly, lowering his voice. "Take Lily out the back. Now." She shook her head. "I can't leave you here." His jaw tightened. "If they get inside, it's her they'll use against me. Not you." Horror. His eyes burned into hers, desperate and raw. "Please. Go." Upstairs, Lily called again, frightened. "Mom?" Another thunderous kick at the door jolted them both. The frame groaned, wood splintering faintly. The men were testing it. Waiting. Emily's breath shook. She backed toward the stairs, torn in two, her every instinct screaming to stay but knowing he was right. "Don't do anything stupid," she whispered. Daniel gave a grim smile that didn't reach his eyes. Too late for that. She turned and ran up the stairs, scooping Lily into her arms just as another blow rattled the house. She carried her daughter toward the back of the hall, toward the window that led to the overgrown yard. Behind her, she heard Daniel unlatch the chain. The last sound before she shoved the window open was the slow, deliberate creak of the front door opening. And the men stepping into her home. The cool night air hit Emily's face as she pushed the window open wide enough for Lily to squeeze through. The child clung to her, whispering, "Mom, I'm scared." "I know, baby. I know." Emily's voice trembled, but she kissed her daughter's hair, forcing her own terror into silence. "We're just going outside for a little while, okay?" Behind them, the front door shut with a heavy thud. Men's voices filled the house, low, rough, carrying menace in every syllable. Emily lifted Lily out onto the roof of the back porch, then swung her legs over, lowering herself down with shaking hands. The grass was damp, slick with dew, but she landed steady. She pulled Lily against her, pressing a finger to her lips. "Quiet now." Inside, the voices grew louder. "Where's the money, Daniel?" one man barked. "You think you can disappear with our cut?" Daniel's reply came sharp, steady. "You got what you deserved. That's all you'll ever get from me." A crash followed, wood hitting the wall, maybe the table overturned. Lily whimpered, and Emily held her tighter, praying the men couldn't hear through the thin walls. Then came the thud of fists, the grunt of impact. Daniel didn't cry out, but the sounds told her enough. A fight had begun. Emily crouched in the shadows of the yard, torn between flight and the impossible urge to run back in. Every fiber of her screamed to protect Lily, to get her away. But the thought of Daniel alone against three men, it tangled her chest with guilt. Another voice cut through, mocking, oily. "You've always had a weakness for kids, Danny. Wonder how your new landlady would feel if we paid hers a visit." Emily froze, blood draining from her face. She pulled Lily back farther into the yard, heart hammering so hard it hurt. Inside, something crashed to the floor, glass shattering. Daniel roared, the sound raw and furious, followed by another thud, a body hitting the wall. Emily bit down hard on her lip to keep from making a sound. She could picture it, the small kitchen turned battlefield, the men circling Daniel, fists and boots striking, Daniel fighting back like a cornered wolf. Then, sudden silence. Emily strained to hear, her pulse roaring in her ears. Lily's small hands clung to her shirt, trembling. The silence broke with a voice, breathless but defiant. "Daniels. You'll never touch them. Not while I'm breathing." Another blow. A groan. The scrape of shoes across linoleum. Emily's knees buckled. She pulled Lily toward the side gate, desperate now, but her foot caught on a broken stone in the grass. She stumbled, her shoulders slamming the fence. Lily yelped. From inside, the noise stopped. The house went still. And then boots moved fast. Toward the back door. Emily's breath seized. She yanked Lily up into her arms, stumbling toward the shadows at the far end of the yard. The screen door banged open. A man's silhouette filled the frame, broad and dark, scanning the night. His voice carried, cold and certain. She's out here. Emily's legs churned through the wet grass, Lily clutched tight against her chest. The yard seemed to stretch forever, the night pressing down like a suffocating blanket. She heard the men's boots pounding behind them, closing fast. Run! Daniel's voice tore through the night. Emily whipped around, he was in the doorway, blood streaking his face, his shirt torn, but his eyes were blazing. For a moment, he looked less like a man and more like something unbreakable, a wall against the darkness. The first thug lunged toward Emily, but Daniel barreled into him with a guttural roar, knocking the man off his feet. They hit the ground hard, fists flying, Daniel's rage fueled by something deeper than survival. The second man sprinted toward Emily. She stumbled backward, shielding Lily with her body, but before he could reach them, Daniel ripped free and slammed into him, a blur of fists and fury. The man crumpled, gasping for air. The third stood frozen for a moment, staring at the carnage, then pulled a knife from his belt. The blade caught the moonlight, sharp and certain. He smiled, cruel and sure of his advantage. Emily's throat tightened. She backed against the fence, clutching Lily so tight the girl whimpered. Please, don't. But Daniel was already moving. He staggered, blood dripping from his mouth, but he stood tall, blocking the man's path. You want me? Daniel growled, his chest heaving. Then come through me. The knife wielder lunged. Metal flashed. Daniel caught his wrist mid-swing, muscles straining, veins standing out as they grappled. The man snarled, twisting, but Daniel twisted harder, forcing the knife down until with a sickening crack, the blade clattered to the ground. Daniel didn't hesitate. He slammed his fist into the man's jaw, once, twice, until the man crumpled beside his partners, all three sprawled in the grass like discarded dolls. Silence fell. Only the ragged sound of Daniel's breath filled the night. Emily stood frozen, her arms around Lily, her body still braced for the strike that never came. When Daniel finally turned toward her, his face was pale, streaked with bruises and blood, but his eyes were steady, almost gentle. They won't bother you again, he said, voice hoarse. Emily's knees gave out. She sank into the grass, clutching Lily, tears spilling down her face. Relief, fear, exhaustion, they all tumbled out in sobs she couldn't hold back. Daniel crouched in front of her, his battered body trembling. I should have told you, he whispered. About who I was. About what I left behind. I thought I could keep it away from here. From you. From her. His eyes flicked to Lily, then back. But it found me anyway. Emily stared at him, chest heaving. You lied, she managed, the words sharp, though her voice cracked. You brought danger into my home. I know, he said. And I'll leave tonight if that's what you want. But I swear to you, Emily, I would die before I let anything touch either of you. The weight of his words lingered in the cool air. She could see it in him, not just the fighter, not just the man with a past, but the one who had chosen to stand between them and the storm. For the first time that night, Emily believed him. She reached out, her hand trembling, and touched his face. Don't leave. Not yet. Daniel closed his eyes, leaning into her touch for a fleeting second, as if it was the only thing keeping him upright. The three men lay broken in the yard, the night air humming with silence, but inside Emily felt something shift. Fear still clung to her bones, yes, but threaded through it now was something else. Trust. Fragile, uncertain, but real. And as she held Lily close, Daniel still kneeling before her, Emily knew the truth, their lives would never be the same. But maybe, just maybe, that wasn't a curse. Maybe it was a beginning. If this story moved you, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful tales. And don't forget, hit the bell so you never miss the next story.